Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and healing from narcissistic relationships. And I've been talking a lot about gray rock lately. There was even a piece in the New York Times. So there's all these different ways to think about all these different ways to think about gray rocking. But let's think about gray rocking in a very basic way. Gray rocking may simply be not reacting to the narcissistic person. Because again, gray rock, everybody talks about gray rock, right? It intuitively makes sense. But it's still not something that everyone fully understands. At the core of gray rock is to make yourself as uninteresting as a gray rock. That means brief responses, short responses, not engaging. Now, some people do really take gray rock to its most gray rocky, boring extreme, really just giving one-word answers, yes, no, in a very flat way. But that can sometimes result in a silent treatment antagonistic vibe, which is never a good idea because it can sometimes place the gray rocker who is just trying to survive in yet another negative light and face more criticism from the world and from the narcissistic person, I should say, they are attempting to gray rock, right? I love gray rocking as a tool for communicating and writing. And yellow rocking, Tina Swithin's technique, enlivens that gray rocking a bit and makes it feel a little less antagonistic. But here is another way to think about gray rocking, and that is as simple as not reacting. And heaven above, this may be one of the most difficult things you could do. This is like really advanced gray rock. But it may be the best interpersonal use of gray rocking. Not reacting doesn't mean just sitting there silent. It also doesn't necessarily mean that autonomic, quick, reflexive freeze response that so often happens to people in narcissistic relationships. Not reacting is sitting through the gaslighting, the misattributions of what you said, being told how you feel, being told what you intend, listening to the lies, and not reacting strongly. Perhaps we could call it tactical dissociation, because that to me is the true core and the hardest part of gray rocking. Not reacting to the narcissistic person's sort of delusional-ish stuff. Listen, all of you who are looking for revenge against a narcissistic person, not reacting may be the ultimate revenge because you remove the supply. Narcissistic people need other people's emotion. It's like blood to a vampire. Your getting upset is in some twisted way how you show that you care, and they kind of get two for the price of one. Your reacting and your emotion shows them that not only can they evoke these strong feelings from you, which helps them feel like they're in charge, but also it serves in their eyes to make you look bad. Because if you were to react the way you really want to react, angry and emotionally, it would be pretty unfettered anger. You may raise your voice, you may use obscenities, you may pound your hand on the table, you may want to walk out of room, you may even want to slam the door. And if you're to do these things, then the narcissistic gaslighter would actually feel better and look at you with a mix of disdain and contempt and disgust, and maybe even mockery and humor, and tell you, ugh, you're so out of control, and what an unhinged, mean, awful person you are. Because you are reacting to their lies and their gaslighting and the work of fiction they've written around this relationship. Gray rocking in this case then means you don't give that to them. It's turning off the oxygen supply. And folks, it's literally the hardest thing you can do. And you can't do it too often because over time it will take a toll on your health. Holding back this much emotion and enduring this kind of emotional manipulation is the equivalent of a bubbling stew of viruses, bacteria, and parasites. If you get near it, you're going to get sick. Ergo, the fact that most survivors of narcissistic abuse often get sick, and often it's not unusual to see things like chronic pain, autoimmune, and other chronic health issues. But that is the best of gray rock. When you're able to do this, you got it. And then something happens after you get to this level of gray rock. You are better able to let go of the relationship. If it's a family relationship where you may find yourself still having to show up, or if it's a job you cannot yet leave, when you get here, and yes, it's exhausting. There's a clarity you get. You see the narcissistic person for the frothing, malcontented, manipulative, dishonest person that they are. And when you are still like that and see it, you can't unsee it. When we defend ourselves against the narcissistic person's accusations, when we get into the mud with them, we are actually giving some credence to their position, as though what they're saying could be right. At a more extreme example, if a person were to talk to me and tell me that they are Napoleon and invited me to visit King Tut in the gardens of Babylon, I would know that this poor person is not in touch with reality and probably wouldn't engage with them that much. That example is obviously more obvious. And we wouldn't engage with them, and we may not be mean to them, but we may not think we're going to see King Tut anytime soon. We would not give credence to them. They are not Napoleon. King Tut is not visitable anymore, and the gardens are gone. So when a narcissistic person tells you how you feel, makes up things that you said, makes up things that happened, lies about what they are doing, and expects you to read their mind, and you know they are wrong, is that any different than the person who thinks that they are Napoleon? There's no point in engaging. But in narcissistic relationships, we spend years engaging with this madness. When you truly gray rock and don't engage, it's checkmate. Now, I'm not saying they're not going to rage. You not engaging will make them more manipulative, more angry, more cruel. It will turn up the volume on the baiting. I recall a woman who no longer reacted to her husband's baiting, and her husband said after multiple episodes of her gray rock not reacting that he wasn't interested in having a polite relationships. Sometimes this technique also gets you the answer that you always suspected, that they really were in it for the fight. Will you have grief? Yeah. But after the grief comes clarity. Sometimes we have to stand still to really hear all of the noises, to really understand what is going on. Our back and forth willingness to engage with the narcissistic person sometimes blocks us from really seeing what is happening. Once you no longer react and you truly gray rock, you see it. In many cases, I suspect that we keep engaging with them because at some level it does keep a relationship alive, even though the interactions are unhealthy and awful. The minute you stop and don't react, you're kind of subsequently forced to see it. You will never interact with it the same way. It's not easy to do this sort of full-on gray rock, don't react. And you can't keep doing it. If you do, outcomes like feeling depressed or anxious or exhausted or burned out or depleted are common. But if you're caught in a loop with them and really want to gray rock, to stop reacting to them, even though it is painful to start this, it will give you the full view of what this relationship is. And if you can white knuckle to the other side, you will get it. That seeing and getting it may mean dread and exhaustion anytime you need to see them. But that dread and exhaustion is a messenger. Pay attention to it. Learn from it. But again, the gray rocking really being not reacting is probably one of the most pure examples of how gray rocking works. It's also probably one of the most difficult to pull off. But if you have some opportunities, especially maybe even in lower stakes narcissistic relationships, to give the gray rock non-reaction a try, give it a try. See how it feels. You will see that at times you feel as though literally you're bleeding some sort of energy out of you as someone's saying all these falsehoods to you and you're trying not to engage with it. But try it out in different ways. There will be times that it'll feel impossible. There will be times that it puts up the volume. But that's what I'm saying. Experiment with it. Be curious with it. But it's not sustainable as a long-term strategy. Once you start doing gray rocking, non-reacting, at some point you're sort of putting a long-term timer and a countdown on this relationship. Ultimately, it's just too exhausting to do this, but it's definitely a wake-up call. Thanks again.